Welcome to the Dibley Diaries for this week. This week we're going to be thinking about families, and for the Rural Challenge I want to think in particular about those families who believe that a particular rural church is their family church. Now it may be that they live in the village, or it may be that they don't live in the village, they may even live miles and miles away, but they will understand, kind of sometimes quite deep in their psyche, that that church is their church. They will almost never come to regular worship. They might turn up at Christmas or on a particular anniversary, or they might just never come to any sort of ordinary worship in that church. They will have almost no role in supporting the church community, or even necessarily thinking about a role for them in supporting the church building, because their understanding is that the Church of England is big and provides money for everything, and that isn't the case, as each individual PCC struggles with their own finances to support their church buildings. These people will believe that they come to church regularly because they come to church regularly for weddings and funerals, and they may come to baptisms. My usual experience of that is that they will ask for baptisms outside the usual church service, because the building is something sacrally important in their family psyche, but the church congregation, the church family and worshipping community is nothing that they think about as important. And it's a real challenge how to move these families from actually saying, well, this is our church. They may be the most vociferous people when it comes to objecting to changes within the structure of the church building, because they don't understand what the worshipping community needs to have that space for. And it's a challenge I've still never actually been able to break. How do we encourage these families who believe that a church building in a particular place is their sacred space for their family events? How do we encourage them from moving on for that to actually make them understand that they're part of a church family? And how do we integrate them into that even if they do not live close by? Thought for the week this week is about families, and we have three passages about families set in the lectionary today. The gospel passage is from Mark, and I'll leave the reference for it in the description. So the gospel passage is the passage where Jesus is talking about divorce, and seems to be suggesting that the divorce in the society in which he's living is too simple, or it's being used in a wrong sort of way. And then Jesus welcomes children to him and says that if people want to enter the kingdom of God, they need to come like a child. That was all really radical. Jesus's view of children was a very radical view of children. And then alongside that we have the Genesis passage, which is about the first family, about Adam and Eve and what that's going to mean for them to be in a family. And then we have a Hebrews passage which talks about those who are Christians being Jesus's brothers and sisters. Again, I'll put the passage in the description. So we have these considerations about what a family is like. And we know that families are always difficult. And Adam and Eve's family is no different. The first family that we find out about, one of the sons kills one of the other sons. So a brother kills brother, and that is the first family that we have. When we think about Abraham's family, and we think about how Sarah resorts to using slavery as a structure for surrogacy, and that goes terribly wrong, and that's important. So Abraham's family is not a perfect family, although Abraham is always considered the father of all, as it were. He has all those promises about it to him. And when we come to think about Jesus's family was complicated enough. Jesus grew up with an understanding that God was his father, and Joseph was his father as well, and Mary was his mother. And how did Jesus live within that family? Actually, it's really difficult for him to be growing up in that way. And the only descriptions that we have in our Bible of Jesus is when he is a boy turning into a man, and he's at that really difficult age, and he doesn't exactly turn around to Joseph and says, "You're not my real dad," but what he does do is that when they have left him behind in Jerusalem by mistake, he says to them, "Of course I was going to be here in my real dad's house. How did you think I wasn't going to be here with my real dad?" And so it's kind of really strange that even Jesus grows up in a very complicated family, and families are complicated. But what I think is really interesting is that the family structure is the one in which God wants us to live. And when we have the understanding of us all being Jesus's brothers and sisters, in Hebrews there's a real understanding that family love is a good model for us as humans. How does that work for us? And in particular, how does that work for us as church congregations? Families don't always get on. We only need to look in the Bible to find that out. Families don't always get on very well. They don't always like each other very well. But we have this idea, which is that a good family model is a model for how we should love each other. And we use the word church family quite a lot. I've worked in some congregations where there were people within the church family who really didn't like each other very much, and in rural settings that is going to be more likely to be the case, because there are not necessarily situations where someone can go to a different church, stuck together in a place, might not like each other very much. And I think I've talked about this before. I have in certain situations been brave enough to say, it doesn't matter if you don't like someone in your church family. It doesn't matter if you don't like them, but we are all the church family, and that is not an excuse not to love them. You can not like them very much, and there might be all sorts of reasons why that is the case, but you have to love them, because that is what we do as a church family. So that is our challenge. How do we love the members of our church families even though we might not like them very much? And how do we understand what God's love is like in a family, and how do we respond to being Jesus's brothers and sisters? The Dibley moment of the week is about a naughty boy who was part of one of our church families where I work at the moment. I've gone into the church building, I was being shown around by somebody, and they with great affection had said, "Oh yes, this is where Thomas carved his initials," and it had a very clear TH and then a date, which was hundreds of years ago, about 300, maybe 400 years ago. And she was explaining, this lady went on to explain about the other things that Thomas had done with his life, and all the things that he'd achieved. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is a member of the church family, a naughty boy who has come good and is still remembered as the naughty boy in the church family all those years later. Well, that's it for the Dibley Diaries for this week. I pray that you and your village, however large or small, have a really blessed week where you can all feel part of God's family.